Welcome to Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. This show is live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app. And if you're watching on YouTube, we hope you're subscribed to our channel. Coming up on the show, we've got midweek college football picks from BJ Cunningham and Stuckey. And Michael Leboff advises on how to bet the lowly Sharks in the NHL tonight. But we also have a lot to digest in the NFL. So to do that, we start with our Action Network luck rankings. And when we call a team lucky or unlucky, it's not hyperbole. It's based on luck percentage, which is the difference between expected and actual win percentage. And this formula helps identify teams that could be undervalued. With that in mind, here's a look at the NFL's luckiest teams through week 9 over the last 5 seasons. In 2019, it was the Packers. In 2020 and 21, the Steelers. Last season, the Giants. And once again, here in 2023, the Steelers. As the godfather of the luck rankings, if you will, Nick Giffen joins us now. To what do you attribute the Steelers being the luckiest team in 3 of the last 4 years? Is this just the Mike Tomlin effect or a coincidence?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly tough to answer with, the small sample sizes we have, 5-6 years, something like that. But, I tend to lean pretty heavily towards this just being a random chance, actual luck rather than a Mike Tomlin thing or a Steelers thing. And here's why. So in those previous 2 years that you mentioned, 2020 and 2021, the Steelers through 9 weeks, they started a combined 13-3. They ended those 2 years after week 9, just 8-1. So, they go from over an 80% win percentage to a 50%, a 500 team. If good coaching explains them being 13-3, what explains them being 8-1? We can't say, well, it's bad coaching. If Mike Tomlin's a great coach, then what happened the second half of those years? Now, let's flip a coin, right? Let's Maria, you're going to be flipping coin. You'll be flipping heads or tails a bunch of times. If you flipped heads 5 times in a row, would we say you're the greatest coin flipper of all time? No, I think that's where we are here. If we have all 32 NFL teams flip a coin, we'd expect around like 5 or 7 of them to end up in the top half of the luck rankings in at least 4 of the 5 years, the previous 5 years, which the Steelers have. Now they're at 506, so make that what you will. And if we had them do it 5 times, there's 0 to 1. It's actually almost exactly half of a team we'd expect to end up in the top quarter of the luck rankings in at least 4 of the 5 years, which the Steelers are the only team to do that. If we go for the bottom half, we see the same thing. We see 7 teams have ended up in the bottom half at least 4 times, and 0 teams have ended up in the bottom quarter. So it perfectly fits out with like flipping coins and things like that. So I think just by random chance, there's going to be a team that ends up this lucky, and it just so happens to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, to be number 1 is certainly even more incredible, but we can't rule that out. I think we really need to look again at that first half, second half split, because in those 4 years where the Steelers were in the top quarter in luck, they started those 4 years a combined 22-9-1, a 70% win rate. So if we expand it, not just for those 2 years, they were number 1, but in the top quarter. They had a 70% win rate through 9 weeks. Well, if we take the expected score metric, which powers the luck rankings, their expected win percentage through those 9 weeks was 48.4%. So actually, in those 4 years, they were pretty much a 500 team. Well, what happened in those 4 years after week 9? They went 16-16-1. So exactly 500. I mean, that's perfect reversion to the mean. So I'm not saying Tomlin isn't a good coach. He is, but the luck kind of trends have shown they're not at a spot where they're statistically significantly different from random chance. And if anything, it points, these first and second half trends points towards what we're really measuring actually is just luck.
I think I know a few Ravens fans that are pretty upset about this, but let's move into this week, because Pittsburgh is involved in a game that meets the criteria for what you call a luck matchup, which is when one of the teams is at least 24 places lower than their opponent in the luck rankings and or has a luck percentage at least 50% lower. So could you explain how and why we could bet on this?
Yeah, so Green Bay versus Pittsburgh. Green Bay is 30th in our Action Network luck ranking, so the third most unlucky team this year. While, of course, Pittsburgh is number one. That's a difference of 29 places in the luck rankings. Anything, like you said, over 24 more is significant. This also is a luck gap of 49.6%, which is 0.4% below our 50% threshold. It's so rare to get a game this late in the season that meets a 50% threshold. That's more for like weeks 2 through 4. So we've got a crazy strong luck signal in this one. There's a lot of trends that fit this. Unlucky road teams meeting at least one of those, 24 or 50% plus trends are 54, 23, and 3 against the spread. That's 69%. Unlucky road teams, if we extend that to 28 or more difference, they're 12 and 2 against the spread. That's 86%. After week 4, it's 11 and 1. That's 92% over a 12-game sample size. Road unlucky teams with a positive luck total, and this game does have a positive luck total, somewhere between 4 and 5, is 29, 10, and 2 against the spread. That's 72%. And a trend Raybon used last week to back the Minnesota Vikings at around a field goal or a little bit longer against the Atlanta Falcons. Games with a low total below 38. Road dogs are 89, 55, and 3 against the spread, 62% since 2009. And that's what we have here this game, hovering around 37, 37 and a half, I think it is, in terms of total. Additionally, Green Bay, they have had the better offensive success rate than the Steelers, better defensive success rate than the Steelers in terms of preventing opponent success, a better defensive explosive play rate allowed than the Steelers. The issue here is they haven't faced a lot of strong teams. They faced the Lions. You could consider the Saints pretty good, but that's kind of about it. Everybody else has been 500 or much lower in terms of expectation there, whereas Pittsburgh has faced a much more difficult schedule. That's why Pittsburgh is 13th in DVOA versus Green Bay being 22nd, but DVOA is measuring what actually happened, right? Whereas the luck rankings, they're measuring what has happened, but also what is expected to happen and taking that difference. And so I think if you revert that DVOA for luck, these two teams become pretty close. On the flip side, we could do expected scores, which is what powers our luck rankings. Pittsburgh's just at 27.3 expected win percent. We talked about how that reverted in the second half of the year for all these Pittsburgh teams in the past. Well, Green Bay at pretty much a 50% expectation. Of course, we need to schedule adjust those as well. That brings those teams really close together. So I think when these teams are so close together, getting that field goal on the road here for Green Bay is probably where I want to go. 93% of tickets, 95% of the money per our Action Network data is on the Steelers. So we'd also be fading the public here.
How could you possibly argue with that logic? You can't do it because you have every number to back it up. And you also use your luck rankings data to identify totals worth betting on. So can you just briefly explain what games this week meet the thresholds for that as well?
Yeah, we'll go quick through these. Luck totals last week, 3-1, 20 and 11, 64.5% on the year, and 60% since 2018 for luck unders with a luck total of -5 or lower. The first one, of course, is a Thursday night football primetime game. I know Simon has been all over these unders, primetime unders, and this is also a luck under with Carolina versus Chicago, -6.8 luck total. Potential for some wind as well. It's kind of right on the cusp of where it could be considered windy. When Carolina has the ball, Chicago is number 1 in yards per attempt against running backs. So preventing running backs from running the ball well, which means it's going to force Bryce Young to throw. And he has not been good. He's been the least aggressive quarterback so far this year per next gen stats, with the second lowest intended air yards per attempt. So if they are going to move the ball, it's probably going to be through the air, but it's still going to be these dink and dunk passes, which is going to run clock. When Chicago has the ball, the Bears are the 4th most run-heavy team just by raw rust percentage and by pass rate under expectation, I guess we could say. They play slow, 10th slowest in pace, 3rd slowest in neutral game situations. And the total has been steadily dropping. It's come down from 40 down to around 39 now. The next key number will be 37. So I do like this primetime under. For the second luck total, luck under, we have Indy versus New England. This one has a -11 for the luck total. Both Indy and New England were in luck under games last week that did end up going under as well. So another one to monitor there.
Nick, we're all smarter for having listened to you, which is what we aim for here at Action Network. Thanks so much for hanging with us.
Anytime. Good luck, everyone.
Sticking with the NFL, this is the AFC playoff picture. If the season were to end today, the Dolphins, Ravens, Jags, and Chiefs would be in as division winners. Steelers, Browns, and Bengals and wildcard spots, and the Bills, Jets, Chargers, Texans, and even the Raiders and Colts are still in the hunt. As for the NFC, the Eagles, Lions, Saints, and 49ers currently lead their respective divisions. The Seahawks, Cowboys, and Vikings are the wild cards. And the Commanders, Falcons, Bucks, Packers, and Rams are in the hunt. So let's do a midseason check-in with Chad Millman and Simon Hunter. Good to see you guys. And we'll do it in the form of bet or pass. Bet meaning you agree with the statement, pass meaning you don't. First, the Cowboys changed your opinion of them after the loss to the Eagles. Chad, bet or pass?
Bet. I was not a fan of the Cowboys going into the game. I do not think Mike McCarthy is a good enough coach against the other coaches in the NFC to help the Cowboys win in the conference. I continue to not be a believer in Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott as a quarterback coaching tandem. So nothing has changed for me. I find it funny that there are all these stories this week. The Cowboys feel good coming out of a loss. And I think that's exactly the opposite thing you should be feeling after losing another game that you thought you might be able to win.
Okay, so you haven't believed in them from the start. Simon, what about you?
Yeah, pass. The only bet I made on the Cowboys this season was them to win the division, and that was just a small bet just because it was plus 200. And it just felt like them and the Eagles were a lot closer than the public perceived. I still think they are, but the difference is that clutch gene that Dak does not have, right? You need him to step up in these big moments, and he just can't do it. And, we've seen it time and time again. Jalen Hurts is playing on a bum knee. He was able to put up 28 points against a really talented Dallas defense. So football, it's the kind of sport where it just shows you who you are. At the end of the day, we can make up stories and we can say, well, the Cowboys they have the talent, they don't have the coaching. Now we can say, well, now they don't have the coaching, but they have the talent. There's always gonna be excuses, right? I think it's just the human nature. We want to make excuses for people we want to believe in. And Cowboys fans want to believe in Dak because Dak has these moments where he looks like a really good quarterback. Even in that game, he made some big time throws. But then it was 1st and 5 at the goal line, game on the line to win. It's all right there for the Cowboys, and Dak couldn't do it. So, yeah, it's a team that if you make futures on them, it's just a waste of money at this point. Like, that's why me and Chad talked about, like, we'll bet them divisionally, them to win the NFC, them to go to the Super Bowl. You'll never catch me making that bet as long as it's Dak and McCarthy, that combination on the Cowboys.
Yeah, you want to believe, but the evidence points to the contrary. And you mentioned that clutch gene. It's something that's really hard to quantify as well. But moving on, we got the Texans. They will win the AFC South. Bet or pass, Chad?
That's a pass for me. I love the Texans story. I love CJ Stroud. I think it's a super exciting franchise. Let's not forget, they're still 2 games behind the Jags. The Jags have very quietly been building momentum since they started playing in London. They've had good wins in challenging spots. And I don't think this team is anywhere near playing up to its potential yet. Doug Peterson, over his career, is a much better coach in the second half of the year. Last year, Trevor Lawrence was a much better quarterback in the second half of the year. I think there was a lot of expectation, a lot of hope that Trevor Lawrence would have been able to build on the momentum that he built towards the second half of last year, not just with that playoff game, but he had great runs in the last 8 games of the year. And then this year, he sort of started out playing like he did at the beginning of last year, where he was struggling to understand Doug Peterson's offense. I do think as the season goes on, this is a really good tandem for learning from each other and about each other. And Doug Peterson is a guy who you want to back as we get deeper into the season.
Simon, are you on the same page?
Yeah, and I'll give some flowers to our guy, Brandon Anderson, who came on our show. I want to say it was like maybe towards August, and he liked Houston to win this division. And I just said, I thought it was a year too early. Like, to me, they do have all the pieces there, but with a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback, I just did not think it would be plausible. I mean, now we're through 9 weeks. If Brandon wants to, he probably can make a nice little position hedging out of that position. Just Houston, like I said in the summer, they have the guys now. It's going to take coaching and time to grow. They're just, unfortunately, they're in a division with a team that's already gone through what they're going through now, which is the growing pains. The Jaguars, they did that last year, right? They got really lucky. They snuck out this division. I believe it was 9-8. They took in the last game of the season against Tennessee. Houston has that chance if the Jaguars had a total meltdown, but Chad just said, well, they're not going to. Doug Peterson, like, he's the difference maker for that Jags team. So, yeah, Houston fans, be excited. No, I just cannot see it breaking their way for them to win this division. If anything, it's going to keep getting tougher as teams get more film on CJ. So, yeah, pretty incredible what they've done this season, the steps they've seen. I mean, what better feeling in the world to know that a team could have had your guy, CJ, and they passed him, took Bryce Young, and you got CJ. Like, Houston fans, they're playing with house money right now. So I think they're all in the same boat as the rest of us, which is like, it's a fun, exciting story. We're expecting them to fall off a cliff here in the second half of the season.
Yeah, the future is bright for the Texans. And can I just say, I love when you guys are like in agreement. It's like so nice and cozy, like we're like happy family. But anyway, the AFC as a whole, let's talk about that. The Bengals are the second best team in the conference. Bet or pass, Chad?
I would pass this week because I do think the Ravens are probably the second best team in the conference. And Chiefs, Ravens, Bengals certainly playing like the top 3 and the class of the conference right now. Depending on what the Ravens can do against the Browns this weekend, this is a huge, huge game for them. It's not a great spot for Lamar Jackson. He's historically not very good as a favorite of more than 3.5. We saw him struggle in an exact same spot against Indy a few weeks ago where they outright lost the game. And then it's not a great spot for favorites in divisional games. Historically, there's 60 games. They covered a 45% clip against the spread the past 20 years. So it's not the kind of place where Lamar and a favorite will normally succeed. So if they can, it gives even more credence to the idea that they are the second best team in the AFC. And look, the Bengals have been playing amazing. They got a good spot against the Texans this weekend. I know Simon likes the Bengals this week at 6.5. So I think it's a good opportunity for the Bengals to continue their upward momentum.
Simon?
Yeah, I'll pass. It's still, the Chiefs are still the class, right? They're the defending Super Bowl champs. I know they've been struggling offensively, but me and Chad have been talking about it since, I think, week 1, the defense of the Chiefs. I mean, you're giving Mahomes, the ultimate cheat code on offense, a good defense. So if you have a team that's built that, anytime Mahomes has the ball and if Kelsey's on the field, you think they can get that third down, you're throwing in now a defense that can get them off the field, right? They can get third down stops, which Mahomes had not had in his career. And, we saw a glimpse of it last year, this Chiefs defense taking the next step. They've really taken that step this season. So still have them at 1. The Ravens, they're looking better than the Chiefs right now, right? But I just won't move them above the Chiefs because of the respect of the Chiefs. So I'd have them at 2. But can't fault you if you put the Bengals in the 3 hole. Like, I love the Jaguars. They have a huge test this week against the 49ers, but they're not proven. Like, they had a fluky win last year. I mean, I don't want to call it that fluky, but they beat the Chargers in the playoffs, and then they lost to the Chiefs last year. And then this year, maybe they'll get the home field advantage. But if it's them versus the Bengals, I think who me and Chad are probably going to back in that playoff game. We're probably going to be taking Joe Cool in that matchup, especially if he's a dog playing against this Jaguars team. So I would love to have the Jaguars in my top 3 right now, but I just can't do it. I'll put Joe Burrow in that 3rd spot. So Chiefs 1, Ravens 2, Bengals 3.
Yeah, we've been wondering, is this the year that the Ravens can break through? And interestingly, in recent seasons, we have seen the Bengals make a Super Bowl. So we have seen that come to fruition, but obviously things can change week to week. As we know, the Bengals were a different team to start the season than they are now. Finally, before I let you guys go, The Chargers at plus 2,500 was a preseason Super Bowl pick given out on Convince Me. Not necessarily a prediction, but, a flyer. Here at the midway point, are you hunkering down on this or bailing, Chad?
Oh, my God. I think I might have forgotten about it after week 1. We're making so many futures bets. Don't forget, we also liked the Bears at 100-1, right? And so this is about looking for value and seeing where the opportunity might be. And you throw some darts where you believe a team should be 20 and it's 25. You believe a team should be 50 and it's 100. And once the die is cast, it's in the wind. And I haven't thought about it again, I think, since we probably talked about it on Convince Me.
Yeah, I think, Simon, going into the season, you got to be brave and you got to be willing to take some risks, whether or not that's actually going to come to fruition.
Yeah, definitely a big swing and a miss. And I will say it's interesting. Last year on Convince Me, I gave out the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I don't think Gifford had us bring that up one time the entire season. So, pretty interesting pick here by our producers.
By the way, Maria, you like it when Simon and I are getting along. Yeah. There is simmering tension between producer Gifford, and Simon.
He's a Cowboys fan.
Gifford knows how to tweak in just the right way.
Well, look, let's not fault Gifford for being a Cowboys fan, even though we know literally everyone rags on him for it. And also Gifford, the producer that he is, he likes little controversy, so that's why he likes to bring up these. These things that we have to answer for down the road after things that we say. He remembers. But that being said, Chad Millman, Simon Hunter, always great to have you on the show. By the way, you can catch new episodes of the Favorites podcast on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Guys, thanks again.
Good to see you.
Over to college football, and we have some midweek action. Tonight, Northern Illinois laying 9.5 against Ball State. The battle for the victory cannon in Kalamazoo as Central Michigan takes on Western Michigan. And finally, no fancy trophy at stake, but Ohio laying a touchdown at Buffalo to round out the MAC slate. As we welcome BJ Cunningham to the show, which of these matchups are you betting tonight and why?
Yeah, I do like the Northern Illinois Ball State game. I do like Northern Illinois at home, -8.5. Ball State is going to be very one-dimensional in this game. Their quarterback, Kelly, is a very limited passer. Last game against Bowling Green, just 9 of 19 for 66 yards. And overall for the season, Ball State is 116th in passing success rate, while Northern Illinois is actually a top 20 secondary in the entire country in both passing success rate allowed and EPA per pass allowed. Now, Ball State has been an effective rushing attack, but in this game, they're going to have to do it in just 3 to 4 yard increments because Northern Illinois is top 5 in the country in explosive plays allowed. In their rush defense, although overall for the season, it's been pretty bad, they've been much better at home versus on the road. In DeKalb, they're only allowing 3.6 yards per carry versus on the road, they're allowing 5.2. Now, the Northern Illinois rushing attack has been very effective as well, and they showed that in their last game against Central Michigan, averaging 7.2 yards per carry, and they can really dominate up front in the trenches in this game because Ball State is a very below average front 7 and a pretty weak front 4 defensive line. This season, they're outside the top 75 in both stuff rate and defensive line yards. But honestly, this game is going to come down to the effectiveness of Rocky Lombardi as a passer. Now, the weather is not going to be great here. The wind's going to be blowing anywhere from between 11 to 13 miles per hour throughout the game. But Lombardi has been improving since MAC play began, especially in that last game against Central Michigan. If you remember, they fell behind early and they were forced to throw the ball a ton in a blizzard, I might mention. And he still went 20 for 35, averaged 8.5 yards per attempt, and threw for 3 touchdown passes. So against a below average Ball State secondary, it'll be Lombardi's effectiveness as a passer if Northern Illinois is going to cover this game. I projected Northern Illinois at -12.1. So the price has dropped a little bit on them. They opened at -10.5. Now they're down to 8.5 at some books. I think the price has gone a little bit too far. So I do like Northern Illinois at -8.5.
Well, we appreciate you letting us know what to keep an eye on college football wise on this Tuesday. BJ, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maria.
And for more on tonight's Maction, here's Stuckey with his pick for Central versus Western Michigan.
Western Michigan. I think Western Michigan's probably the look against Central Michigan. This Western Michigan team, they lost so much from last year, and they had a new head coach, so it was a struggle early in the season, but they played a lot better of late. They lost by 13 at Miss State, lost by 13 Miami of Ohio, like showing signs of get better, and then they almost beat Ohio, and then they just absolutely destroyed Eastern Michigan. Not this past Saturday, the Saturday before. And one of the reasons is they went to a third quarterback too. All these teams have used like 10 quarterbacks, but they went to a third quarterback, Hayden Wolf, the Old Dominion transfer, and he's given the offense some juice. Their freshman running back's also been pretty good. So I think Western Michigan's a team that's kind of trending up, and Central Michigan, they've picked up some wins, but been pretty fortunate in close games. So I think Western Michigan's probably the look there.
The San Jose Sharks are making history in the worst way possible. They enter Tuesday night winless and have allowed 10 goals in back-to-back games. Their -42 goal differential is the worst ever for an NHL team in the first 11 games of the season. As we say hello to our NHL expert, Michael Leboff, what do you make of the Sharks and this historically bad start?
Yeah, I'm pretty fascinated by it more than anything.
You would be.
Yeah, it's crazy because when Nick Martin and I on Line Change on our season preview episodes were going over the rosters of the teams near the bottom, nothing really jumped out about this team being historically bad. They just looked like your normal run-of-the-mill 31st or 32nd worst team in the league. And obviously we were underselling them. Or overselling them even with those low expectations. And now it's just a car crash. Like, it's hard to look away at this point. The market clearly didn't adjust quick enough on just how bad this team was. And then over the weekend, you get back-to-back 10-goal. They let up 10 goals back-to-back games. And now they're taking on a Flyers team that was projected to be about the 6th worst team in the NHL this season, and the Flyers are a -192 favorite on the road against the Sharks. I've never seen anything like it. So yeah, I'm pretty fascinated by it.
Well, being that you're so fascinated, I gather that you're betting on this game tonight, and you mentioned the Sharks at plus money, just trying to recover from this car crash. What is your pick for the game?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, they have allowed 20 goals in their last 2 games. I think the first team since the 60s to do that in consecutive games. It would be shocking if this team doesn't come out with a better effort, especially defensively in this game. I know that they're bad, and it's got to be hard for this team to get motivated for a season long, a season as long as the NHL when you start like this. But when you get embarrassed like that, you got to show some sort of effort. And I think out of the gates, we'll see them be sharper than they were in those 2 10-goal losses, one of which I bet the Sharks in. I'm very happy to admit that I had them on the money line against the Canucks in their first 10-goal loss. But I'm backing them to be in a much more defensive posture coming out of the gates against the Flyers, and just trying to slow the game down and get back to fundamentals and just make it harder for teams to score on them. Taking baby steps here. So I think that there's some value on the Flyers to go under half a goal. So to be shut out in the first period by the Sharks here at plus 160. That is a pretty big number considering where we had the Flyers projected before the season. And they've been all right, but they're not an offensive dynamo by any stretch. So I do think that the Sharks can make it hard on the Flyers for at least 20 minutes tonight.
You would think so. Like you said, it would be shocking if the effort wasn't much improved. Michael Leboff, thanks so much for joining Green Dot Daily.
Anytime.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, like the ones you just heard from Mike, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. That's all for this episode of Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app.